And we're coming to our mats to find this space of ease. And that can be any space. It doesn't have to look like a yoga pose. But this idea of allowing the body to find the space that feels muscularly soft to you. Where can we be without muscle tension? And that's a tall order, I recognize. And often it takes this entire class to really feel like you can be with ease instead of tension in the body. But doing our best here in this first few moments of class to find that space. And don't be afraid to move as we're going through this grounding and centering. If you're getting messages from the body that something needs to change, it's okay to change. Sometimes we feel like, oh, we've picked the spot and now we have to stay there. That's not the case. Listen to those messages and allow yourself that change if necessary. So taking a few of those deep inhales and longer exhales. That longer exhale helps you settle maybe a little bit deeper into the weight of the body. And before we really begin to ground and center, just noticing as you're settling in here, what is present for you? As one of my favorite teachers says, what's the weather like in there? And we try to notice what might be present in the physical body, in the thinking mind, maybe the emotional body, with compassion. And maybe making note here to try to remember what feels present for you. We'll return to this idea at the end of our class. And then we'll begin to walk our way through that physical body. So noticing if there is sensation that's present for you. It might be calling to you, it might be gaining your notice. It might also be helpful for you if there's not a lot that is coming up into your notice, just to check in to some spaces. Maybe they're the usual suspects where you know you might be holding tension or a chronic area for you, and perhaps you're rather methodical working your way through the body, checking in, beginning at the feet all the way up through the head. So a few minutes here to notice sensation, or to perhaps check in at spaces and becoming aware of what's present in that space. And throughout our practice today, you might return your notice to some of these spaces to check in. Our practice isn't always about achieving something, especially yin, but it is worth noticing if change has happened. And that's why we spend some time at the beginning of class just to notice the state of our body, our mind, our emotions when we begin, and maybe an opportunity to notice if there have been differences or even similarities at the end of class. Drawing your awareness to your breath, and without changing breath, take a moment here to notice rhythm. So as you're inhaling, you're counting for yourself your own personal number of beats it takes you to breathe in, and your own personal number of beats it takes you to breathe out. Noticing rhythm of the breath, breathing in and breathing out. If it's helpful to you right now and during our practice, we're going to see if we can extend our exhale by just one beat or two. Now, if that makes you feel out of breath or like you can't catch your breath, let go of that pattern. But if it's helpful, extending that exhale by one beat or two here for the next maybe 4 or 5 breaths. When you finish with those 4 or 5 breaths, just that nice deep, longer inhale, exhale out the mouth. Giving yourself a little movement here. We are going to remain on our backs for our first pose. So while you're wiggling around, stretching and opening, just know that we're going to stay put here so you don't have to shift to seated and then back to resting. So I wanted to begin class today with a twist. And this idea of an early wringing out and opening of that abdominal area. So remaining on your back, we've got some choices here. If you are going to do twisted roots, you're going to take that left knee and cross it over the top of the right. We might do stacked knees where we're dropping knees over. A few of you might prefer to have one leg long, left leg bending in to draw over. Everyone's knees drop over to the right side. So deciding where you would like to be, and then letting those legs rest, and knowing that if you have a pillow handy or if you have blocks handy, you can always stack those either underneath the thigh if the twist is too deep, or between the knees. So opportunities to make some adjustments so the knees don't go quite as far. When we're in twisted roots, those knees are going to go further. So knowing that as you're picking here, you may want to make some adjustments to how you're doing the twist as well. So settling in here. And if you would like, we're going to do 3 breaths that might release us just a little bit further. And it's really a diaphragmatic release, that breath muscle release. So if you would like to join me, we're going to exhale fully. We take a deep inhale and we're going to hold that inhale briefly. And then as we exhale, we let it go out the mouth. We'll do that 2 more times with a little bit longer hold. Inhale, breathing in deeply, holding there. Little pressure builds. Exhale, whoosh it out. Last time, inhale deeply, holding just a little bit longer. And exhale. Letting your body and breath settle in. For anyone who would like to practice a little pranayama, During yen, you might consider that slightly longer exhale. We're going to talk about what that can do for you here in just a few moments. That idea of breathing in your own natural number of beats. And as you exhale, we extend by just one beat or two. Our exhale stimulates the body into a rest, relax, and restore response. That heart rate goes down. We start to activate that parasympathetic nervous system, the one that helps us relax, versus the sympathetic nervous system, the one that helps us in fight or flight. So exhaling just even by one extra beat or two can start to relax the body a little bit further. When we're twisting, we're also offering an opportunity for that vagus nerve to be stimulated into that rest, relax, and restore response. And while it's a bit tricky on the screen here together, there will be periods of silence. I talk a little bit more on these Zoom live classes just so you know that I'm still here and that you haven't lost your sound. But we are going to offer ourselves some opportunities here for a little bit of quiet. And in that quiet, we're practicing some of those skills we do at the beginning of class. We're noticing sensation with curiosity. We might be noticing breath. We might be noticing what's present for us in thoughts, physical body, emotions. An opportunity into the stillness to really tune in to our experience of this yoga practice. Taking a moment here to notice some particular areas that I want to draw your attention to. Noticing the outside of the thigh, that left leg. Noticing if sensation's present, if a sensation of tension, resistance might be present, or stretch. Drawing some awareness to your hip area and maybe a little bit of that glute area. Noticing that left side rib cage. Noticing the front space of the heart and a little bit of that left shoulder area. And noticing the neck and head. This traveling along that line of where we may find some release in connective tissue, but certainly not only there. There may be lots of spaces that you're experiencing the pose. Let's begin to bring those knees back through center. Giving yourself a few moments here to rock side to side. And when you're ready, your sides don't have to match. We're going to move to the other side. Pardon me, taking that right leg if you're in twisted roots and crossing it over the top. Dropping those knees over to the left side. If those knees are stacked and you need a little assistance, you can place a pillow or a block or a towel or a blanket underneath a thigh or in between the knees. Excuse me. And a few of you may be drawing that right knee in and pulling that knee across the body while the left leg remains long. If you would like to join me in those releasing breaths, we're going to begin by fully exhaling. We take that deep inhale, and as we inhale, we hold on to it, let a little pressure build, and exhale, whoosh it out the mouth. 2 more times. Deep inhale, breathing in. We're going to hold it just a little bit longer. And exhale, release. One more time. Deep inhale. Holding. And exhale, release. Settling in then to the space of the body and the body breathing as it chooses. And as we find some of that stillness in the pose, just taking a moment to notice how this side feels compared to the other as you came into that pose. Noticing similarities or differences. Maybe just simply noticing what's present for you on this side. If breath is a place you would like to focus, spending some time here extending the exhale by 1 beat or 2. Perhaps tuning into sensation in your abdominals. So on the other side, we noticed that side body, but we're also releasing connective tissue that's interwoven in that abdominal cavity that's surrounding specific organs. And noticing if there's sensation in that belly region. And an area we may be releasing here in the twist, and not one we often consider, is the rib cage, lung and heart area, connective tissue surrounding all that, interwoven, holding bones together. It's not a space that expands a lot as much as those abdominals, obviously, but there is some release that may be happening. So taking a moment to notice that space for yourself. And then just some awareness for the length of the spine. Maybe we visualize the front traveling all the way from that root chakra, that pubic symphysis, or the pelvic floor, through that front side spine, up through the neck, really ending at the roof of the mouth. Perhaps you'd rather notice a spine from the back, thinking from that tailbone through the sacrum, all the way to the back of the skull. We practice this noticing during our yin as a way to uncover more. The more we notice, the more that comes up into our notice. And that gives us the ability to respond to those messages that we might be getting, meaning, do we need to change the pose? But also just become more familiar with our physical body so we can make adjustments all day long to what our physical body may be asking for. As you feel ready, we're going to begin to bring the knees back through center. We're going to have some choices here about whether or not we stay on our back or come into a seated position. So stretching first, wiggling. If we remain on our back, we're going into butterfly. And the idea here is that we're just simply letting knees drop out with arms comfortable. My arms tend to be most comfortable hanging out rib cage. You might feel they're in T or overhead. Some of us may prefer to be in a seated forward fold. So we'll gently come up and off the floor. Be kind to that body. We've been laying there for a bit. And bringing the soles of the feet together. Now, soles of the feet can be pretty far away or can be fairly close. It's up to you and also up to your hip structure here. When you're ready, finding that fold forward, you may find you want to support the head. If you happen to have blocks at home, you can use blocks, you can use hands. We know that this forward fold is relative. So you may be in the full expression of this opening while you're sitting a little bit taller. So either resting on your back and reclining butterfly, or coming up, folding forward with the soles of those feet together. The other sort of special thing I'm going to say about teaching here online is you have an opportunity to change this. So this is not a pose you want to do. Pick a pose that might occur to you. And usually it's the first one that pops in your head that your body might be needing. So there's an opportunity to make adjustments, to change whatever might not suit you today or might not suit you throughout most classes. So finding that space, perhaps in butterfly, that gives you some inner thigh release or opening. If you're resting on your back, often there's a sensation of some release through that front side pelvis as well. For those of us in a forward fold, we're going to feel maybe a more targeted sensation in the back side of the body, anywhere from the back of the skull down to that tailbone, maybe through those legs in different ways that don't include those inner thighs. There is no right or wrong way to do yin. It's making adjustments. So we are trying our best to feel the targeted area that we're hoping to make more pliable and release. And it's knowing your body well enough and a little help from a guide, a yoga instructor, to give you some options of ways to change the pose to access where we're trying to reach. I think that can be one of the freeing things about this practice. There's no right or wrong way. It's just adjusting to what's best for you. As you've settled into the pose, if breath focus is someplace you'd like to be, perhaps tuning in and allowing that longer exhale to happen, you may find very naturally over a period of time that your exhale extends beyond 1 beat or 2. And that's a great sign that you're ready to extend your exhale beyond 1 beat or 2, that the body has built its tolerance for this breath interval and it's ready to go into that next step. Just like we tune up muscle, we're tuning up our breath practice in order to be able to endure longer pauses at the top and bottom, and maybe even doubling that exhale, which truly inspires that relaxation response in the body. Noticing what's present for you. We're going to begin to ease out of the pose. For those of you in that forward fold, just slowly restacking the spine. For those of us who are resting and reclining, maybe using those hands to draw those knees in a little bit closer. Give yourself an opportunity to move in any way you choose. And we'll all come on up to a seated position. So once again, if you've been on your back, maybe roll to the side, push yourself up with your arms. It's a kind and gentle way to treat the back, especially if you've been on the floor for a longer period of time. We're going to be moving onto our bellies. We're going to move through our Sphinx pose. Lots of options here, as you know. So we might be resting feet fairly wide. Mine might be a little bit wider than yours. Elbows right underneath shoulders, and then deciding if you would like to rest the head on, the head on the hands and the fist, or resting with palms over that forehead. For some of us, this is not a great spot to be for our back. So you might end up extending elbows a little further away, resting forehead down. There may be a few of you who prefer a little deeper release, and that's melting heart. So an option here, beyond Sphinx and a little bit of what looks like crocodile, is to have knees right underneath hips. Arms can be reaching and head is resting. You can rest head on arms. You can throw a pillow over those bent arms so the angle of the shoulders are a little bit less intense. Melting heart, Sphinx, or a modified Sphinx that looks a lot like crocodile, this back bend. Finding what works for you today and doing our best here, especially if we are in Sphinx, to try to remain muscularly soft. Now that's a big order through those shoulders and through those arms. And we might not achieve that full release, but it's the idea. Now we keep inviting that idea in order to eventually get there, to get that release. If you happen to be in a more challenging version here of this back bend, meaning challenging for you, let yourself exhale a little bit longer to settle in, even to begin the pose, to see if there's a little bit more release that can happen into the weight of the body. You might continue that slightly longer exhale. It's possible we do that for a few breaths. We do it for the whole pose. We do it for several poses. There's no right way to do that. In each pose, you may find your body's intuition tells you what it needs here. Maybe it only needs a few of those breaths. Maybe it would like to focus fully for those 5 minutes on that breath. There's that wonderful moment in yoga where we stop doing yoga and yoga does us. And that can happen in yin, that can happen in yawn. And part of that process is uncovering these layers and tuning back into the body's messages, and then allowing that felt sense or your body's intuition to guide you further in your yoga practice. That's when yoga is doing you. From a physical component here, great for my folks who are working with sciatica, great for my folks who are working with SI joint stuff. A great release for all of us. We spend so much of our time really rounding forward. This is that expansion and release of the space that is chronically rounding forward and tight for many of us. If we're experiencing a lot of tension in that backside body, and it's yard work time, I know we're out doing yard work, we're folded forward, doing lots of things outside. Spend some time here doing the reverse where we're opening that front side body. And that way we reduce the tug of war. There's a little tug of all those muscles in the backside body trying to pull you upright while you're rounding forward. And could we bring some balance back into the front and back side of the bodies? In these moments of silence, tuning back into your experience of the pose, to physical sensation, maybe checking in with thinking mind, noticing where thinking mind is headed. And perhaps there are emotions that are arising, not unusual in any yoga practice. So, one of the ways we start to cleanse that energetic body to release some of the things that no longer serve us. We're going to begin to release the pose. Our next pose is child's pose. We'll be there just for 3 minutes. So if you're ready to shift into child's pose, pressing back, and at this point, especially through those shoulders, you may feel that you'd like to have your arms down by the side. There are going to be some of us who really, for lots of reasons, child's pose is not that comfortable. It's tough in knees and back. And if that's the case, we're just going to flip over and draw knees into chest, knowing that in between here, you've got lots of options to wiggle around to release the pose. So either knees into chest or child's pose, coming to rest when you're ready. Once you've released our last pose, just 3 minutes here today in child's pose. This restorative position restores energy, restores a little bit of balance here after that back bend. We're counterbalancing by opening up and releasing those muscles that were just contracted or compressed, maybe a better way to say that. Maybe tuning back into breath. Perhaps that longer exhale. You might also explore the breath as expansion. So, especially when we have some pressure on the belly, we may notice that the breath expands into different areas, maybe side rib cage, maybe back rib cage. For many of us, it'll stay right here in the chest as well. But an opportunity to explore expansion and release with the breath. We're going to begin to come out of our child's pose, or if you're resting on your back, you may want to stretch legs nice and long. This is the point in class where I mentioned at the beginning, you may want to be close to a wall. I'm going to give you a few options here of where we may want to go. Actually, 3 options. We're going into our sleeping swan. And sleeping swan can be really challenging for those of us working with a narrow hip structure. And that's why we might send it to the wall. If you know you want to do it on the floor, we're going to take that right knee, we'll draw it forward, and we let that ankle kind of sneak in front of that opposite thigh. I'm going to walk my leg back and find that space where I can fold forward. Now, if you have a wall handy and you're interested in trying this, we're going to sneak over to the wall. And probably the hardest part about this is getting up on the wall. And one of the trickier ways, or one of the sneaky ways we can do that, is to tuck a hip in against the wall. And then we're going to slowly lean back on elbows and cartwheel up. This idea that I don't have to do a lot of booty scooching to get closer to the wall. So in this case, we're going to do sleeping swan. We're going to take our right ankle and cross it where it's appropriate. Some might be below the knee, some might be above. And then we'll let that heel draw down. So we create the same opening as if we were on the floor. It's a gentler way to treat that hip socket. If you've got that head of the femur in a more narrow hip socket, it's also a nice way to treat that back. So if you're experiencing back stuff today, coming into sleeping swan, resting on your back. You control the stretch by the straight leg, either traveling down or going higher up on the wall. this opportunity to open IT band, iliotibial band, a very tight space of connective tissue. It's also a great stretch for sciatica that's coming from your piriformis, which is in your bun cheek. A nice opener and a complement to some of the release of the pelvis that we've been doing. So we've done forward folding, back bending. We've opened the inside of the thighs. Now we're going to open the outside of the thighs. When we free up this lower part of the body, and really a lot of times it's, rib cage below, maybe thinking hips and below, we release some of the pelvis tension or pelvic tension. And that pelvis is full of ligaments, muscles, tendons, lots and lots of connective tissue. And it's really the connection from the upper body and lower body. It's what takes maybe the most beating throughout our day. So when we can find some release in the parts that are above it and below it, an opportunity to have it move more freely or have more mobility. If you're focusing on breath, perhaps experiencing that longer exhale. Taking a moment to notice this side thigh area from your knee to that greater trochanter, that pointy bone on the outside of that hip. If we're in a forward fold, we also have this component of surrounding of the back. So noticing the backside body, maybe even the backside of the pelvis. For those of us with legs up the wall and using the wall for our sleeping swan, spine is neutral, and it's worth noticing what it feels like to be on the earth with our spine as neutral as it will be in this moment. Hopefully a little bit more neutral than we started. And maybe we're experiencing that outer thigh or inner thigh area if we're up on the wall. For those of us in sleeping swan on the floor, we'll begin to use those hands to rise up to release. If you're on the wall, you might send both legs up and kind of give them a little windshield wiper. Just rocking them side to side with legs extended towards the ceiling. Our sides do not have to match. And so you may find on one side you want to shift. You want to go into sleeping swan on the floor, or you might want to go up on the wall if the wall is available. And this time it will be that left knee that comes forward. So if we're coming into that opposite side, we walk that foot out just a little bit, trying to get those hips parallel and folding forward. So we want to make sure we're not listing over to one side, and that might require a pillow or a towel or blanket or yoga block underneath that hip structure, finding that space you would like to rest. For those of you on the wall, we're just shifting to the other leg. So the left ankle will cross over the top of the right knee. That right heel begins to slide down the wall in a way that helps you access the stretch comfortably. As we do with one-sided poses, we take a moment to pause to notice how this side might feel compared to the other side. Are there similarities or differences in this side as compared to the other? If we're focusing on breath, returning to that slightly longer exhale. This may be also a space during class here as we've traveled through quite a lot of it to check in with the inhale. Is that average number of beats the same as when you began? Again, there's no right or wrong, and we're not really trying to change anything. We're just simply noticing, how's that inhale doing? Is it longer or shorter than when we began class? And do we need to adjust our exhale to suit that? Tuning into the experience of the outer thigh from the outside knee to that greater trochanter, that pointy part right on the outside of your hip. Tuning in to the glute or the bun to see how that might be experiencing or feeling this pose. Maybe we notice the places where we feel compressed, where there's a squeezing of tissue. Back of knee, crease of thigh. For some of us, there may be an element of compression in the shoulders if we're in that forward fold on the floor. We'll slowly begin to release. If you're on the floor, using those arms to press you up. If you're resting on your back with legs on the wall, sending those legs up, there will be an option here for our last pose to have legs up the wall. So you may want to stay put. That's just where both legs are reaching straight up that wall. As you're coming out of the pose, I want to leave some space here for our last pose for you to choose. So you may have a favorite that you wish we did. You may have one that we've already done that you would like to do again. If there isn't one that is occurring to you, one of the great neutral spaces to really be here at the end of a practice is to be resting on your back in constructive rest pose. So we might come with feet wide, knees dropping towards each other, maybe wrapping arms around if that feels releasing for your back. If that feels very tension causing, let the arms go where they choose, out wide, overhead, or resting down. So choosing here at the end of class a pose that you would like to do. If it happens to be a pose that is one-sided, I'm going to let you know when we're 2.5 minutes through that pose. And again, if not, if there isn't one that occurs to you, constructive rest pose, just a great space to be, to have that nice settled spine and pelvis, which will reflect in the neck and shoulder area. So finding that spot. And again, for those of us who've chosen to be on one side or use one leg or one arm, I'll let you know when we're halfway through, 2.5 minutes through. For those of you who are in a symmetrical pose where everything is doing the same, legs in the same direction, arms in the same direction, torso nice and neutral, you're going to stay put. So you'll stay put in that space for 5 minutes. And my suggestion here for breath, if you have been focusing on breath throughout your practice for this last pose, invite that focus to release. Let the body simply breathe itself. When we're focusing on breath, we're actually directing our life force energy and really inviting it to move in some different ways through the body. And here in this final pose, we want to let the body's wisdom find its own way without our direction, letting that energy settle into the body in spaces that it's needed most. We've been sort of dredging the channel as we're working through some of these longer holds, creating some opportunity for energy to be more flowing more freely for sure, and those stagnant or deficient areas getting more energy or letting that energy flow through. Now we just simply want to let the body be. That energy that may have moved now finds its way to the spaces that it can nourish the best. For those of you in a one-sided pose, we're going to switch sides, moving now to that opposite side. Beginning for all of us to release the pose. We're going to find our way into final relaxation, and just sort of to give you an idea of where we're headed, we're going to do a guided relaxation today. I'm going to do that body scan. It takes about 8 minutes. We'll rest for a few moments or minutes in silence, and we'll come out of it then to finish class. If the body scan is not helpful to you and you do want to relax here, just mute me. That's the nice part here about being on the screen instead of in class. So the invitation here is to find a space for yourself that feels like it brings more ease into the body, or maybe we can think of it as the most ease into the body. It can be any space. It doesn't have to look like a yoga pose. It can be that traditional resting space of Shavasana. Wherever you would like to be, that can bring the most ease into the body. So this guided relaxation here at the end of class is meant to continue to further stimulate your body into this sense of ease. Sometimes we notice that you can hear me, but not necessarily the words that I'm saying. And that's a common way to be through this body relaxation. Sometimes you notice you might be falling asleep. And I always tell folks, please gather rest where you can. Rest, especially in these times, is difficult to achieve. So if you're falling asleep, fall asleep. It's okay. As we move through, I'm just asking you to let your awareness and notice travel with the sound of my voice as we name each place, and then we travel on. Take a few deep, settling breaths, inhaling and exhaling. Noticing the weight of the body as it's resting on your mat. We begin our guided relaxation by noticing the head. We notice the mouth, the lips, the teeth, the gums, the tongue, and the back of the throat. Noticing the roof of the mouth. Noticing the nose, the in and out breath, traveling in and out through both nostrils. Awareness of the ears, the curved outer whorls of the ears and the earlobes, the inner ears. We bring awareness to the eyes, noticing the eyelids, the eyelashes, the curved surface of the eyes, the center of the eyes, the backs of the eyes. Noticing the space between the brows and the forehead, the top of the head and the back of the head. Tracing awareness to the left collarbone and shoulder joint, the left upper arm and elbow, the left forearm, wrist, palms, and fingers. Bringing that awareness up through the left arm, the left collarbone and crossing over to the right collarbone, the right shoulder and upper arm, the elbow and forearm, the right palm and fingers. Bringing that awareness up through the right arm, across that right collarbone to the space of the front of the heart, to the bottom rib cage, to the belly and front side of the pelvis. We bring awareness to the back side of the torso, starting with shoulder blades, the back space of the heart, that back bottom rib cage and low back, the back side of the pelvis. Bringing awareness to the left hip joint, the left thigh, the knee and shin, the ankle, the left sole of the foot, and the toes. Bringing awareness back up through that left leg, through the left hip joint, across to the right hip joint, the right thigh and knee, the shin and ankle, the right sole of the foot and the toes. Bringing awareness back to the space of the front of the heart. And from the front of the heart radiates a sense of well-being, a sense of ease. Well-being and ease radiating through the head, the arms, the front and back of the torso, the legs. A sense of well-being and ease radiating through the entire body. And taking a few moments to rest in that sense of well-being and ease. Beginning to bring awareness back to the sound of my voice, back to the space that you're resting in. Inviting that deeper inhale and that longer exhale out through the mouth. We begin to reawaken the body, maybe starting with those fingers and toes, circling wrists and ankles. It might feel good to stretch arms overhead, to stretch legs nice and long. in your own way and your own time, we're going to begin to come back to a seated position that feels comfortable to you. As you find your way back to that comfortable seat, take a moment to notice what's present for you in this moment. What's present in the thinking mind, the emotional body, and this physical body. And then recalling back to the beginning of class. And take a moment just to notice if it's similar or different here at the end of class. If this gesture feels okay to you, we'll place palms together and bring thumbs to our heart. May all be well. May all have peace. And may we all be filled with compassion and loving kindness. The light in me is honored and grateful for the light in each of you. I bow to you. Namaste.